Welcome to Motivated to Lead podcast, helping you become a better leader. I'm your host, Mark Klingsheim.
Hi everyone, Mark Klingsheim with SEMA Partners. Glad you could join us today for this conversation with Martha Aronson. Martha is a corporate board member, has also served on a number of nonprofit boards. She has been a senior executive with companies such as Medtronic, Hill-Rom Holdings, as well as Ecolab. She's a graduate of Wellesley College and also has an MBA from Harvard University. She's received a number of awards, including Women in Business Industry Leader, as well as 35 Most Influential Women in Healthcare in Minnesota. She was selected in 2016 and is an outstanding corporate director. Looking forward to our conversation with Martha today.
Give us just a little bit of your background, kind of a high level of your career.
Sure. Well, thanks, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here. And let me start by saying I was one of those people who really was not sure what she wanted to be when she grew up. And so when I was finishing up Wellesley College as an economics major, I was really not certain where to head next. And as with many people, I had some terrific professors who encouraged me and a mentor who thought that business might be an interesting area for me to try. And so I did. So coming out of college, I joined Bain & Company, management consulting firm in Boston, which for someone who doesn't know for sure what they want to do is a terrific training ground because you're able to work on a wide variety of business issues in a wide variety of industries, both of which was tremendously helpful to me. Then one of the most interesting things happened in my life. 14 months later, I was laid off from that job. And it's about the best time you can ever be laid off from a job because I didn't have some of the big M's, I call them. No mortgage, no marriage,
Right.
not a lot of those major responsibilities. So I took that opportunity to try to differentiate myself before heading off to get an MBA, which had started to seem like an interesting path. Mm-hmm. And so I actually headed back to the Midwest, Minnesota, where I'm from, and flooded the market with my resume of all the wonderful Fortune 500 companies we have here. And I literally got a job offer from Medtronic 2 days before General Mills, and so I took it. So I was not overly strategic in how I thought about these things at the time, but sure. I joined what's called the Corporate Development and Strategic Planning Department at Medtronic, and worked there, again, with a number of terrific people who were mentors and friends. And then after a period of time there, went back to business school as a Medtronic scholar and then rejoined the firm and spent a total of 18 years at Medtronic in a variety of general management roles and a stint overseas and running a number of the functions at the company. And then I decided to leave there in about, I think that was 2009 or 10. Because I was running more functions than P&Ls, and I wanted to get back to an operating position. So I headed to Hill-Rom and was president of their North America business for several years, which was great fun, except that I was traveling a ton. And so I decided to make a lifestyle change, and I came back to Minnesota, a Minnesota-based company, and that's when I joined Ecolab and became their president of their healthcare division. Where I had a terrific 4 years until, unfortunately, I ended up on the other side of the healthcare system as a patient. And that's after going through breast cancer 4 years ago, decided to pivot a little bit and change the way I organize my life. And so now I serve as a corporate director, and that also gives me time to be involved in several of the nonprofit organizations about which I care deeply.
Great. If you were able to, with what you know now, go back and talk to Martha Goldberg as a 20-something-year-old, what advice would you give her?
I'd give her the advice, which is to focus initially on the people for whom you're working with and the people with whom you are working. Because I think in your early years, it's all about getting as many experiences as you can. So I would not focus on the amount of money I'm making or whether this is a city I want to live in for the rest of my life. But I would say or even the product line. I don't think it's as important if you went to General Mills, if you work on Cheerios or Yoplait. What I do think is important is, do you feel like you're working for people from whom you can really learn. That to me would be the best advice.
What advice would you ignore?
I would ignore the advice of people who say college graduates need to focus on the disciplines that are hiring the most. I think that's a mistake. Life is a long road. Mm-hmm. And I think college is a time to explore a lot of different topics and areas of interest for people. And so even if you've known from age 10 you want to be an engineer, this is the time to also take English courses and to take archaeology or take something very different, because I think you'll live a more full life. Mm-hmm. And I think the people that get very focused immediately on which job will give me the greatest return in terms of salary my first years out of college, I think you'll shortchange yourself in the long game of life.
You mentioned about mentors. Tell me a little bit about that. Were you pretty strategic as far as the people that you chose, or how did that work out?
No, I think this is one area where I'd say I was very lucky rather than good. And one of my first mentors, I was a tennis player growing up and played all through college. And I remember when I was in college, the coach asked me one time, she said, "There's a trustee of the college who's loves to play tennis, and next time she's here, you're going to play tennis with her." And it's one of those you say, "Oh, Coach, why me? Can't someone else do that?" Well, this woman turned out to be one of my lifelong mentors. So what happened was I was very fortunate in that every time this woman came back to campus, she wanted to play tennis, and I was that wasn't too painful for me to play tennis with her. And she really became a mentor of mine. So as I said, it was not necessarily a deliberate process, but I will tell you, she gave me terrific advice, and there's never been a job that I've taken since where I did not consult Claudia is her name.
As you're thinking about some of the books that you've read over the years, what would be the top three that you would have as far as for someone to read that definitely have impacted your life?
Well, impacted my life, right. There are probably a couple categories. I think if you talk about life, which is a big topic, obviously, I think Tuesdays with Morrie is an outstanding book because it really reminds us all that at the end of the day, it's about relationships and the people with whom you spend time, and it's not about the material items. So I think that's one. When I think about business, which I thoroughly enjoy, one of the books I did enjoy, and I don't read a lot of the business books, to be perfectly honest with you, but one I did read was about the turnaround of IBM. I may get the title wrong. It's something about when elephants can't dance, but it's when Lou Gerstner came in to turn around IBM. And the crux of the book is essentially that culture is everything. And, Gerstner had come out of McKinsey Consulting, where, of course, there's all sorts of frameworks and analysis and strategy to think about when you're analyzing and thinking about companies. But what he admits is that he completely underestimated the importance of culture. And we've all heard the old phrase, culture eats strategy for lunch. I absolutely believe that. I've seen it over and over again. So I think that was another very interesting book to me. The third one is probably Madeleine Albright's Prague Winter. Madeleine's a Wellesley graduate, as I am, and so she's one of our most famous alums, and yet she's incredibly down to earth when you spend time with her, and incredibly articulate and well-versed on all the issues. She's very global. She's an immigrant, came to this country and had unbelievable success here. So I find Madeleine Albright incredibly inspiring.
That's good. How would you describe how you led early in your career versus how you lead today?
I think the big difference is that early in your career, you are a doer. You have to do a lot of things and complete a lot of tasks. And that was great. I enjoyed that immensely. What I would forget to do early in my career, I remember this at Bain, I would be so excited to finish a piece of analysis that I would almost go running through the office to my manager to show them, here's the analysis I did. And then they would say, and so what's that tell us? And I'd say, oh, I hadn't really taken the time to step back and say, what's it mean for the larger project, or what's it mean for the strategy this company's trying to do, to put in place? So I think part of it is when you're a doer, it's starting to think about what's it mean, and how could I go to my boss with the information and not only hand them the data they want, but also say, isn't it interesting? I think what this tells us is that their strategy of trying to gain market share in this particular market may have some issues, and here are the issues. So it's really about kind of going to that next step and thinking about the information you can give your boss and your team so that they can be even more successful.
That's good. What would you say as far as keeping your passion level for your work? Sometimes people that have been in careers and been successful for 20 years in their career, how do you keep that energy and passion for what you're doing?
Yeah, I think it's about figuring out the ways you can learn how to innovate. And innovation is such a big word. It's kind of hard to get your arms around. And of course, people immediately think of, technology. But I think some of the most exciting innovations, again, I speak from the business world perspective, are around when you can think about different ways to get things done, can be just as innovative. You can innovate a process just as much as you can innovate a new, leapfrog technology of some sort. And so I think what's really interesting is learning from other industries. And now, of course, whole companies have made, this is their strategy, right? I mean, Uber's whole strategy is to disrupt an industry. And so there are plenty of people trying to do it now. But I think spending time learning about other businesses, other industries, other cultures can oftentimes lead to little sparks of ideas when you say, oh, we could think about doing that in this part of the business or in that part of the business or in that country. So to me, that's one way. And you can either do it by, subscribing to all sorts of different things to read, and or by keeping your network alive and meeting with different people from lots of different industries, and both, I'd say, in the for-profit, not-for-profit world, because I think there's a lot of great leadership ideas that can be exchanged.
Great. So when you've had a time where you've felt kind of overwhelmed at work or in life as a whole, or unfocused, what are some questions that you ask yourself to get back focused on what you need to be doing?
The first thing I ask myself is, where's my list? I'm a list maker.
Got it.
And for me, I have found that getting it all down on paper, what I need to do, helps it become more sort of bite-sized chunks that you can then go work off of. So that's certainly one thing I do. Second thing I do is actually try to increase my exercise, because it's not only good for your body, right? But it clears my head. So I think in those moments, I also try very hard to get to the gym. And then I think it's about prioritization. I mean, I often look at my calendar and say, what's tomorrow? Or, and I'm looking the immediate, so by noon on any day, I'm usually looking to say, is there anything else I need to do to be prepared for tomorrow? Is there anything else I need to be prepared for next week, as I look out a week and then look out a month and then look out 6 months? So I think it's about sort of staying as well prepared as you can and not putting yourself in the kind of crunch crisis mode. At least it doesn't work for me.
Sure. And a new leader that is hiring their first team, they're putting together their team. What are some things that advice that you would give in putting together teams? You've managed large groups, and I'm sure there was that initial time that you were building out a team. What would you say? Yeah,
the biggest thing is that you absolutely want to surround yourself with people who you think are smarter than you and have far more expertise than you do. And so many leaders I have found are afraid to do that because they feel this need to look like they're the smartest person in the room. Mm-hmm. I never had any issues about having people far smarter than me around me, because in the end, I think it made us all look really good. And I think that's the key. And so I always tell people the most diverse team you can put together, defined as broadly as you possibly can, will get you to better answers. It may take a little longer. You need to be patient and you need to encourage healthy discussion, but you will get to a better answer.
Great. What are some of your favorite interview questions that you like to ask?
I like to ask people if one of their friends walked through the door, friends, not professional colleague, what 3 adjectives would they use to describe you? I like to ask people if I got a hold of their last performance review, what would it say are their, 2 greatest strengths and the 1 or 2 things that they're really working on? I like to ask people what they're most proud of. I like to ask people what they do for fun when they're not working, so that I see that they're a well-rounded person who doesn't just work. Those are some of my favorites.
So what do you do when you're not working for fun?
Depends on the season. I love summer. And so in the summer, I will water ski whenever I possibly can. I love to paddleboard as well. I live on a lake in the summer, so I'm lucky in that I can water ski and paddleboard a lot, which I absolutely love doing. I also have a husband and 3 boys. And so a lot of my time when I'm not working is spent running around with the kids. I've coached one of my kids' basketball teams. And I just like to try to be an engaged parent, but not an overbearing parent. And then I'm really, as I said, I'm a people person. And so I just adore my time with friends, and whether it's a walk around a lake, or a coffee or dinner. And then I'm also a big theater fan. And I'll also, in my spare time, be at the Guthrie Theater as much as I possibly can.
Great. In the past 5 years, what new belief, behavior, habit has improved your life?
Well, the past 5 years, for sure, it's been, I'd say, more exercise. Since I rotated out of, I'll call it going to an office, running a large division all day long, every day. My new schedule, I would argue, does permit me more hours in the gym and or on the lake, which makes me a bit happier. And I've been very focused on that after having gone through breast cancer.
Yeah. Is there any technology or gadget? I'm a gadget guy, like technology. Anything that you use every day or that you've added to your life that's helped you be more productive?
No, I mean, probably just that Google Calendar. I think that's the one, yeah. and keeping track of all the kids' stuff on there as well, and doing that juggling. And frankly, I'll tell you, the other piece that makes me incredibly efficient is I have an absolutely fantastic administrative assistant. And we work virtually for the most part, but having someone who can help me in that regard makes my life, enables me to focus on the things where I really want to spend my time. And for that, I'm quite grateful. So may not be a technology or an app, but here again, I guess the theme with me is people. I've found an absolutely wonderful person, and she does an amazing job helping me out. Great.
So you do a lot of board work, and that's your primary focus today. Tell me a little bit. I have executives all the time that are asking me, maybe have not served on a board, maybe you're at that stage in their career, they want to take that first board seat. What advice would you give them?
Yeah. I think my first bit of advice is think long and hard about why you want to serve on a I assume you're talking about corporate boards here.
Right. Right. Corporate or potentially nonprofit.
Okay. I mean, so the same answer for both, and even more so on a nonprofit. I mean, you really want to think through, do you really believe in the mission of the nonprofit organization? I mean, I'm involved with the Guthrie Theater, and I'm involved at the college I went to, and I believe wholeheartedly in the mission of both of those places. And so then giving your time, your energy, your expertise financial resources to those organizations you feel really good about. And that's the whole idea. And you think you can really help advance the mission and the vision of the organization. So that's the most important thing. And certainly on the for-profit side too, you want to, if you're going to join a corporate board, you want to have some interest in the type of business they're in or the industry they're in. And again, think about what can you bring to the table, but also think about, is this something that you will really find interesting? Because you will spend an awful lot of time. And the amount of time you put in to prepare for each meeting and your time at the meetings, and if there's an issue or an acquisition or a divestiture in between, you will spend a lot of hours. And so you want to enjoy the people you're going to be working with, including the management team, as well as other board members. And you're going to want to, feel good about making that commitment. So I think that's the most important thing first and foremost. Mm-hmm. And then I think as far as trying to get on a board, again, it's to work your network that you have. And if you don't already have a group of executive recruiters that help try to find people who can help you connect to executive recruiters, as they also do a lot of the searches for board seats.
Right. Well, thank you, Martha. This has been enjoyable, and definitely appreciate your time. And wish you continued success in your career.
Thanks so much, Mark. Nice to chat with you today.
Great. Thank you for listening to the Motivated to Lead podcast. Please subscribe on iTunes. You can also see a video version of this interview at motivatedtolead.com. This podcast is brought to you by SEMA Partners, helping you find your next great leader.